This is Morning Express. It's time for The Way It Is, and I'll just start with a quick reintroduction of our guest this morning. And to my extreme left, we have Senator Omar Hassan, Senator Mombasa County, also the Wiper Party Secretary General. We have next to him Honorable David Kosing, who is the Member of Parliament for Pokot South. We have Honorable David Oching, who is the MP for Ugenya, and last but not least, Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining us and welcome. And Weda, before we had gone for the break, we were discussing or looking at the ICC, what the courts had to say about the ICC, the Rule 68 to be used, the use of recanted evidence. And your take on that? I know you had been very vocal on saying that the prayer rallies were not going to help in any way for this case. So
I think it is now clear that they can see that the prayer rallies in the forest was not what was required. What was required was work at the African Union, work at the UN, and work in the court where you tell the judges this is wrong. Rule 68 is dangerous even now, not only to Ruto or Mheshimiwa Ruto. It is dangerous to every person on the continent, because it simply says that if there's an allegation against you and people come and purport that they are witnesses and they write all sorts of things about in their statement, when they withdraw, those statements can be used. It is still dangerous and people should not go to sleep, but I think it was a step in the right direction. It was very, very, very good ruling in my view. The judges actually restored some dignity to the ICC from a kangaroo court to a serious court where the rights of an accused person can be sustained. So I think the next step, again, let us not go to sleep. Let us, if we are having prayers, let us have genuine prayers for the Deputy President and Sang, and also the legal team to continue working on the remaining part. Let's not celebrate and think it is over, because ICC court, I keep on repeating, is a political court. They will hang on anything small. So work must continue legally, work must continue diplomatically, and prayers. I heard about the victims. No amount of compensation can compensate life. Those who lost their lives, those who lost their property. Those who died, I think, let their blood go down to make this country a better country, a more united, where tribes are more united. We understand that we are one. Some have already been resettled, the IDPs. Others have lost, but we need to leave it behind us, resettle those who are alive. If we have a little compensation, because you cannot be compensated everything you lost, a little compensation here and there, let them be paid by government, and let us move on as a country.
Senator Omar, I know you are front runner when you came to human rights, and now coming back to the local terrain and looking at the victims, do you feel that enough has been done to at least resettle them and also just ensure that their welfare is taken care of?
You know, when we decided to politicize matters PV, I think we lost direction in terms of justiciability. And those who are in their graves demand justice. Yes, their blood could probably make us a better country, because we may find fodder for us to reconcile and have cohesion. But the fundamental, principle is that there shall be no impunity to murder or crimes against humanity. So I think ultimately we must get down to the heart of this matter. And the good thing about law is that when crimes border on murder, there is no statute of limitations. So you're in power today or out of power tomorrow. Your people are not unwilling to investigate today. There might be a government willing to investigate tomorrow. And there's been some substantial documentation that could guide this process. But secondly, there's a group of victims that nobody talks about. You know, there are IDPs who moved into camps. And the IDPs went back home and lost literally their entire livelihood, particularly those from Naivasha. They lost their entire livelihood. Mm-hmm. They did not go into camps because they felt insecure. Mm-hmm. So they totally went back to Western Kenya. Some went back to their relatives in Nairobi. These are also victims. So we have a very narrow definition of victims. And my brother here thinks it's about the government putting colours in camps and giving 100,000 to IDPs to go back home. That is a very, very narrow interpretation of what accountability or or reparation is all about. We must also look at the broader picture and be able, and these members who are dislocated from some of these areas are well known to all of us in terms of the fact that the very onset they did register at that time when these setups had been made. So it must not appear that we run also these issues from a political point of view, that you feel that you're fairly embarrassed on the basis that there are camps existing, so you close down camps and give people compensation. So ultimately we must look at the broader picture, and I think the TJRC speaks to some of these issues. Some of the reports that have been published, including the Waki report, was not only about accountability. It was a whole issue about restitution, reparation, and issues of that nature which we must go into deeply and see how best we can be able to mitigate the impact, negative impact of post-election violence.
Okay, Honorable, because seeing in defense of the government, is there anything that's going to be done to ensure that those small little cases that have been left there of lack of compensation, so that we see the same energy applied, not just for Ruto and Sang and the president, but also for Kenya as a whole?
You see, Mike, number one is, I think we are now almost in an agreement, in my view, that let us disassociate these two items, right? Let us disassociate the ICC and Ruto case and Sang from the victims. Yes. Because the moment you tie them up, we tend to think that somebody somewhere don't want this case to end. People want to use the victims, the victims to be able to sacrifice the two brothers who are very innocent. Once we do that, then of course, what the government, I don't hold brief for government, that. I'm a legislator, so executive will know what they're saying. But I think from the Jubilee point of view, I'm very clear in my mind what it has been done so far. And that's why this country, Mike, is very peaceful. That is number one. We are not assuming, and I'm not looking at it from narrow-minded as my brother here said. Of course, this is the guy who has a lot of information about this thing. And of course, Kenyans know that, And we were asking them now, this is the time to forgive each other. Let us not blame each other, throwing blames to Jubilee, throwing blames to CORD, throw blames. I think this is the time, as my Wakili said earlier, that this is the time this country should move forward. What we are expecting, Mike, which is very important, out of the ruling, which came yesterday, we are expecting three things. Number one is that within a week, the trial chamber should end up this case. Because now already, the most substantive part of the evidence has been removed, which is Rule 68. And therefore, as somebody said, we are not keeping quiet. Nobody is keeping quiet. Nobody is even waiting for 1 minute. We are expecting the trial chamber now, with the new ruling yesterday from the appeals chamber, to end up the case within a week. Or then the prosecution should move, should seek leave, right? To be able to say, look, you know what? And that brings us a very big question, that why did the trial chamber pushed defense to be able to present a no case to answer motion, while they could have even waited a little bit longer until at the moment. This is the time when, for example, that motion of no case to answer should have been very appropriate. However, then we are expecting maybe that the defense will be able now to say, you know what, the recanted evidence has been removed, and therefore what we are trying to say now is, without recanted evidence, is there anything remaining? Or Bensouda actually tomorrow, or even today, Monday, because it's still night there. Today, Monday, she should just come and say, you know what, I have lost the substantial part of it, and I have no case.
Are you suggesting that Bensouda was purely basing her argument on the recanted evidence?
She said that.
Nothing else.
She said that when she was actually applying for recanted evidence. She said, without recanted evidence, I have nothing.
All right, let me
and that's what
come
we're
to Honorable Ochieng, and I want us to move the conversation forward. So maybe just closing comments on ICC, because I want us to look at the voter registration that begins today.
Mike, the issue is that I don't think anyone in Kenya believes that Ruto and Sang can carry the burden of the country on their backs. That one I think we need to remove from the minds of everybody. Whether us in ODM and CORD, we don't believe that Ruto and Sang can carry the burden of the country on their backs. But what is important is that this kind of happenings, post-election violence, what you've seen happening before, the Wagala massacre, and all these things, these ones cannot be, we cannot do what Senior is saying, that we should then accept and move on. We must get a system of addressing these issues when they arise, because how many things are we going to forget? Every other time, after 2-3 years, say now we forget and move on. No. There must be a mechanism domestically, like I said earlier, to address the result of these kind of things and put in measures that ensure that these things don't happen again. For me, I think that is the most important thing.
Okay.
Yeah, can we get a way of ensuring that we have mechanisms locally to be able to, stop these things from happening again, and when they happen, people are punished at home.
Okay.
Without having this kind of.
All right, let's close on that.
Yeah,
Final
let me just
comments
close
on that.
by
Yeah.
saying, look, leaders who are talking about retribution and all sorts, go back even to South Africa. You saw what happened in South Africa, apartheid. Mandela came out, and all he did was to say, let us forgive each other and let us move on. Those who are still talking about opening up the wounds and so on, actually wants us to go back and fight. And people can fight, and they can fight. Let our leaders stop that. We have two issues now. The defense team for Honorable Ruto and Sang should not go to sleep. It is not much, it's not as easy as it is. There is still some little evidence that needs to be fought so that they are released. Then when we come back to the victims locally, it is in the hands of these people, these ones, the legislators, senators, and the MPs. They can decide by way of legislation that those who are involved, those who are hurt, those who need to be compensated in this budget, we are allocating this amount of money to compensate. It is in their hands. It's not in the hands of President Uhuru. It's not in the hands of Jubilee administration. Let us not posture here when we have the powers to do that. And Kenyans will be waiting for you to see which direction are you giving us in terms of the victims and compensation. That's what I'm praying.
I have to make this point. I think Council is totally wrong. When you want somebody not to commit a crime again and to be a deterrence, you punish them.
Yes, you do.
You cannot tell us to hug and cuddle when people have killed. You punish them.
But the question,
there is nowhere in statute today.
Senator, the question
there is nowhere in statute or international law, even in our Kenyan law, where you forgive someone who has committed murder. Come on, there is nowhere in the Constitution where somebody can be forgiven for committing murder.
In the Constitution of Christ.
Which let us be.
Senator,
Let us just not argue on a.
I don't know why.
This is international, and I'm not saying it is Ruto and Sang. You get your mind out of that. We're talking about people losing their lives. No, it's not about Ruto and Sang. You guys think it's political about Ruto and Sang. What do you mean? What happened? What wameuliwa 1,000? At least I know 1,100 people lost their lives. What happened? International statute. Listen, really, seriously, when I hear these people talk about forgiving, and yet they have buried 1,300 Kenyans.
Senator, the question would be then who is to be punished?
Those who committed these murders, and I'm not saying it's Ruto or Sang. These guys always misunderstand that it is Ruto and Sang. These investigations must be done because this country has not closed this chapter on account that people who lost their lives are seeking justice. They seek justice through our court systems. That's why there's no statute of limitations on the crime of murder. That's why international law does not pardon or give immunity to anybody who has committed crimes of murder. And that's it. That is a fundamental principle of law. So you cannot tell us we can forgive these other things, acts of arson. We can forgive acts of some of these acts which are mundane. We can forgive them, but we do not forgive murder. Not the Constitution of Kenya, not international.
All right, point made. I think I'd want us to move this conversation on because of time. Because today is being the 15th of February, we have the voter registration that begins. And let me come to you, Honorable Ching. And the question is, how prepared do you think IEBC is? We know that. I don't know whether it's a result of pressure, but they doubled the BVR kits, and one of the complaints that the opposition had was that the BVR kits were not enough. Your comments on how prepared IEBC is?
I will tell you this because I sit in the Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament, and this is something that we've been on for a while now, and I think they're not as prepared as we have wanted them to be. One reason is, the reason you have mass registration is to ensure that you are able to close the gaps in terms of the distances people travel to go and register. Because there's only one seat. There's only one center of registration normally at the headquarters of the county constituency, not the ward. Any day of the week you can walk into a constituency office, but big distances, 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers for some people. So the reason you do mass registration is to ensure that you get the kits closer to the people. And I don't think the kits we are now being told are going to be taken out are going to be taken that closer to the people. But the most important thing for me is that we had already said earlier in our constitution that this kind of things should be preceded by serious voter education.
Civil education.
Voter education. Now, this never happened. And so even out there, people are asking questions. Are we changing stations? Are there new registrations? Can I change my polling station? If I had registered in Nairobi, can I go register at home? Those kind of things. So one thing that is going to mess up this exercise is the lack of voter education. I won't blame IEBC on that really, but the fact that we in Parliament also didn't give them money early enough. Okay, but IEBC needed to have done that before. What should have been done earlier would have been voter education, then you come to voter registration. That has not been done, and you can be sure this is going to mar the process. Secondly,